Om Ganati Manandasya Ganagana Salakya Chaksurud Meditam Yana Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayam Rupakaram Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyatapara Kamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Rakanatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Larita Shibhishakan Vitam Stam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata Desara Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaur Bhaktabindam Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayadhira Nishta Padeshu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Otamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki Nikamal Kapadurgaritam Padam Shukamakaram Rita Dravya Samhitam Pibata Bhagatam Ashamariyam Mahora Hori Shiga Bhuvibhakaham Trama Piyadabhisuta Vishadam Samapyadena Vidam Viduksaram Prakyahido Maranam Sanklesha Nirvanam Santi Nanyatam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Rakesh. Please accept my humble obeisances. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday. We may have drain on our listenership today for two alternative events. Of course, it's Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, an election unlike any other with bitterness and division. And the second reason is there's Braj Mandal Parikram, I think led by Radhanath Swami, occurring simultaneously with this. So we have some competition. We have the good and the bad and the ugly, all of it happening, converging on the same day. And we have the Transcendental too. Good morning, Rupa Manjari. Welcome to this broadcast in the month of Kartik. Well, as I mentioned, Braj Mandala Prakram is going on, headed by Radhanath Swami, and Election Day also. All we can say is may the best man win, and may there be a peaceful transition of power. After spending 5 days, good morning, Prashant. All right, we're going to get some references today. We missed that yesterday. Such a valuable contribution to our overall discussions here to have all those verses to follow. Good morning, Jimmy and Taruni, all the way from Minnesota. Welcome on during the month of Kartik. Welcome on Election Day. The whole world is watching America, but I don't think we'll mention much about that in our presentation this morning. We spent 5 days on the last verse. Now we're finally transitioning to the next verse, which is the 39th verse in the 3rd chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Here is the Sanskrit if you're following it along. Ateha danya bhagavanta itam yad vasudevare kila lokanate kurvanti sarvatmakam atma bhavan nayatra bhuya parivarta ugra. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all universes, and such inquiries guarantee 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. The inquiries of the sages headed by Sanaka are herewith praised by Sutta Goswami in the merit of their transcendental nature. As already concluded, only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. In the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam, it says, Shrota vyadini rajanam ninam santisa apasyatam atvatanam griyashu griyamediram. It says those who are attached to kith and kin, hearth and home, have many, many subject matters for inquiring. From the moment that the sun makes its appearance on the horizon, the birds, the bees, the animals, they're full of inquiries. They have lots and lots of inquiries. And yet none of those inquiries pertain to the absolute truth. They are only related to how to eat, where to sleep, who do I have to defend myself against, and with whom can I have sex and produce a family. So there are many inquiries in the non-devotee world, in the world of conditioned souls, in all the various species of life spread throughout the universe. But rarely do we find any inquiries on the nature of the soul and the absolute truth. That's only possible in the human form of life, and in spite of the fact that it's possible that the human form affords the opportunity, we find that hardly anyone in the human form of life takes advantage of that opportunity. In the 7th chapter, I think it's the 2nd verse, Prashant, of the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kastid yatati yatatanam siddhanam kastid mam vetipatanam. The option for inquiring the absolute truth is not even available to those in the subhuman forms. They just don't have that faculty. It's not that they don't have the ability to inquire. They do indeed. It's not that they're not rational. Many meat eaters rationalize their eating of flesh on the basis that animals don't inquire. They don't think. Animals think, and they think very well. Better than us in some areas. But they don't think at all in the area of truth, ultimate absolute truth. They don't think at all in the area of the soul. That's what we as humans can uniquely do. That's the option that's only available in human form of life. But an option means, by its very definition, that you can do it or not do it. So most humans don't do it. Never is that more clear than during a political campaign with all the mudslinging and the bitterness. There's no scintilla of spiritual illumination whatsoever. It is simply conducted on the gross animalistic bodily concept of life. And it says that for a society that has not transcended above animal consciousness, for a society that has not taken the option of philosophical inquiry, then such animal-like members of society elect as their leaders other animals. Swavid varashtakari samstuta parusha naya kanapado jatu nama gradagaja. Animalistic men who have no sense of themselves as spirit soul, who have no sense of themselves as servant of the Lord, are no better than animals, and they naturally elect other animals to be their leaders. And so today is election day. Today is celebrating the animals electing other animals to lead them. Now, nowhere except in human society is a possibility of transcendental inquiries possible, but wherever and whenever we find this occurring, jump on it. Get right in the middle of it. Take advantage of it. Have a big smile on your face. Just like you hit gold, you've struck gold. You've won the lottery. Munya Sadraprishtaham in the 2nd canto. Bhavad Bir Loka. Yat Krita Krishna Sambato Yatma Shubhati. The sages are saying, oh, here are some special, elevated transcendentalists, rare as hen's tooths in human society. And they've gathered together. There's an assembly of serious truth seekers. And into that assembly has come Sutta Goswami, who has just come from another assembly addressed by Sukadeva Goswami, where for 7 days, without eating and sleeping, Sukadeva spoke to Maharshi Parikshit all the secrets of life. So they thought they just won the lottery. And they sat down, they put aside themselves thoughts of sleeping or eating or drinking. They opened up their ears and they began to, let me qualify that. They did not totally put aside thoughts of eating and drinking. They put aside thoughts of physically eating and drinking. They were above being enraptured and absorbed in the topics about Krishna. They barely deigned to consider their physical needs. But they were eating and drinking for the soul. The body eats through the mouth and digests in the stomach. But the soul eats through the ears, you see. Man does not live by bread alone, it's said in the Bible, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So the Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses, mostly directly from the mouth of God, the most intimate revelations that are incomparable in any other scriptural study. They were poured into the ear of Arjuna, and by proxy, inasmuch as Sanjaya repeated the message of the Bhagavad Gita, we drink through the ears. Satam prashangam mama virya sambido. We hear about the heroic teachings and pastimes of the Lord. And when we drink those topics through the ears, it feeds the soul, which resides in the region of the heart. And one of the first things that we learn from the pure devotees of the Lord, from the realized devotees, is that the Lord reveals himself in three aspects depending upon the level of advancement of the devotee. Vedanti tat tatvam, this is the 11th verse in the 2nd chapter. Vedanti tat tatvam vidas tatvam yasgaram brahmiti paramatmiti bhagavaniti sabdyate. There are three phases of the absolute truth. There's the impersonal effulgence, which is called Brahman, the energies of the Lord. There is the Paramatma, or localized aspect of the Lord. And then there's the Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who reveals himself face to face to those who are undividedly and uninterruptedly and unmotivatedly engaged in his devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The absolute truth is one, spirit. But that does not mean to say, by saying the absolute is one, that it's homogeneous, it's undifferentiated. That's not to say it. Like we say, okay, we all as Americans, as one, hopefully everybody as one, will go to the polls. But having reached the polls, we're not going to all vote red or all vote blue. Some of us will vote red, some of us will vote blue. And for most of us, what red is offering and blue is offering is not completely satisfying. It's less than ideal, but we pick, generally speaking, the lesser of two evils. So even though we're all one, we're all Americans, and we're all voting as one, our votes are different. And even though we cast our votes in one or two ways, there are so many ways in which we could wish that things would be different or more to our liking. So oneness does not necessarily and always mean interchangeable or homogeneous. Similarly with spirit, to say that God is spirit does not mean that I am God, you're God, we're all God, that spirit itself is indifferentiated, because spirit itself has specific, observable, mentionable qualities. Spirit comes in an impersonal way as the Brahmajyoti. Spirit resides in a personal way as the four-handed Paramatma feature within the hearts of all living beings, which makes that spirit omnipotent and omniscient. The omnipotency, the all-powerfulness of the Lord, the all-knowingness of the Lord comes from that Paramatma feature of the Lord. The the impersonal feature, the imperishable Brahman, evokes the eternal feature, the Sat feature of the Lord. The expansion of the Lord in the hearts in a localized way represents the Chit, the knowledge potency of the Lord. But the highest aspect of the Lord, which includes the Paramatma, the Brahman, is called Bhagavan. That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ultimately, the absolute truth is a person. But as a supremely powerful, omniscient person, he gets his power and omniscience from pervading and supporting all the universes, being within each atom, being within the hearts of every living being. That's where he gets his control, and that's where he gets his knowledge. And then insofar as he impersonally pervades and supports all that is created in this material world, that's where his eternity aspect kicks in. In the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 28th chapter, 40th verse, we find this. Yato mukad vishpuragad damad bapi shashambhavat apyat me bimatad yatagnir pritak ugamat. You have fire. Fire is one, isn't it? Fire is fire. And yet, the fire itself can be understood as flames, it can be understood as sparks, it can be understood as smoke. It's all fire, it's all one, but it differentiates itself. It categorizes itself. Fire is at one and the same time flame, one at the same time sparks, and one at the same time smoke. So the absolute truth is one, but don't mistake that saying to take the absolute truth as undifferentiated or homogeneous. The absolute truth is in his personal feature. He is in his localized Paramatma within the heart feature, and he's also all-pervasive in terms of his Brahman feature. So one should know not just the impersonal aspect of the Lord, as the impersonalists or Mayavadis do. One should not just know the Paramatma, the localized features within the heart of every living being, as the realized yogis do. Pantashtu koti sadavatsara pragyamyor vaira tapi manashi muni pangavaram so pyastya prapada simdya vachanta tadve govinamari purusham tamahang bhajami. The impersonalists may study the scriptures and stretch their minds and speculate all they want for many, many lifetimes, but they'll never, without performing yoga, graduate from the impersonal realization, from the Brahman realization to the Paramatma realization. But those yogis who have purified themselves by performing austerities, and dhyanavasita tadganhena manashagadaram, they have isolated and identified the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the heart. It is said even such yogis, it takes them many, many lifetimes, much discipline, much practice, much austerity, much control, to ultimately be able to discern vaguely the tip of the toe of the lotus feet of the Lord. And yet, what's difficult for the impersonalist, and what's difficult, if not impossible, for the yogi, is very easy for the devotee. Vedashu dudavam adaramam atpabhakto. The devotee, in worshiping through the bona fide spiritual master, what happens in devotional service is that the guru, by definition, is head over heels, mad after, in love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the beloved and the guru is the lover. So there's an infectiousness. When you were kids and your friend had a girlfriend, he would talk to you about his girlfriend all the time. You may not have even met the girlfriend, but you feel like you know the girlfriend and you appreciate the girlfriend by the conversations that you have with your friend who's in love with the girlfriend. So the effect of associating and serving and inquiring from a spiritual master is infectious. One catches what he or she has, which is love of God. And if you catch love of God and assist the bona fide spiritual master in spreading the glories of the Lord, then automatically the lower levels of realization are included. Just like the example is given, there's a sun globe, and the sunshine. So if you know the God of the sun globe, Vivishwan, then you know the sunshine and you know the sun globe. If you know the sunshine, it doesn't mean you know the sun globe, nor what to speak of the sun God. Or if you're a little bit more advanced and you know the sun globe, that means you know the sunshine, but you don't know the sun God. But if you know the sun God, included within that knowledge is the knowledge of the sun globe and the sunshine. So similarly, if you know Bhagavan through the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, then you know the Paramatma that resides within the heart of every living being, as well as you know the impersonal feature of the Lord. This subject matter is further discussed in a conversation wherein Vidura speaks to Maitreya. We find this verse in the 7th chapter, 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 41st verse. Thanks for coming up with those. Yato Mukad Vishwugnagad. Prashant is right there. Agnir Mahi Gaganam Ambu Marud Dishascha. We're getting all the references here from Prashant. Very, very good. Vedanti Tat Tadbambidas is there. Everything one after another. Okay, here's this verse for you, Prashant. As I mentioned, the 41st verse, 7th chapter, 3rd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Vedas Chayagnascha Tapodanari Chanaga Jivabhaya Pradhanasha Na Korvaram Kalam Api. The word is used throughout this particular discussion and through these verses, the word abhaya, which literally means to be without fear. Bhaya means fearful. Every living being without exception, even Brahma, the creator of the universe, even Indra, the lord of the heavenly planets, all the way down to the insignificant ant, is riddled with fear. How much of the election campaigning has played upon fear? See, if fear were not the prominent feature in this material world, then why would one candidate choose to simply play upon fears every single day, at every single rally, at every single moment? Why is it that one candidate would expect to be elected solely on the basis of his playing upon the fears of his constituency, that in itself is absolute, inconvertible proof that fear is the most predominant feature in this material world. But there is an antidote for that. There is a way to become abhaya, or fearless. And when you become fearless, then you are immunized against material life. Material life is synonymous with fear, and spiritual realization is synonymous with freedom from anxiety, freedom from fear. And that is achieved how? Here it's explained by Vidura. O spotless one, speaking to Maitreya, your answers to all these questions will grant immunity from all material misery. Such charity is greater than all Vedic charity, sacrifices, penances, etc. How do we get immunity from fear and consequent immunity from conditioned life? When we hear that the Lord is not only pervasively present in his impersonal feature, but he's also expanded himself within the hearts of all living beings. The first level is that God is within every atom. Andantarishta paramano charantasha. He's the smallest. He's inserted himself even within the atom. Scientists know that the smallest particle, the indivisible particle, is the atom. There's nothing smaller in terms of the physical world than the atom. But Krishna, being spirit, is inside of the atom. That means he's everywhere present and all-pervasive. Everything rests upon him, just as the cloud rests on the air. The air may be invisible, the cloud may be visible, but we know that the air is supporting the cloud because the cloud is aloof in the sky. So the fact that Krishna is within every atom is certainly consoling. That means nothing happens that's outside of the sovereignty of Krishna. Nothing happens. Not a bad leader, not a pandemic, not fearful eruptions and upheavals. As confusing and as concerning as it may be, we have to retreat to that place of peace, knowing that everything is under the control of the Supreme Lord. And sometimes when things seem most out of control from our limited perspective, those are the times when God is doing his greatest work in history. We just have to be prepared not to be able to understand everything that God's doing, but to trust him that he knows what he's doing. He's inside of every atom. In his Paramatma feature, he's in the heart of all living beings. So what does this mean? To know the Lord in these two features. He's in complete control, folks. Don't freak out. Don't panic. Don't give way to hysterica. He knows what he's doing. He's got this covered. He's still on his throne. And then, when you know him in his supreme feature as Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, you see him with this smile on his face, standing the threefold bending way, playing his flute, peacock feathers hair, then you know he's your best friend. He's not only Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, he's not only in complete control of everything material and spiritual, he's not only the enjoyer of all sacrifices and all activities, but he is Sudiram Sarvabhutanam. He is everyone's very, very best friend. And what that knowledge does, it immunizes you against principally fear and all material miseries and anxieties. It takes you to a level above fear, above anxiety, above stress. This is the result of inquiries to the right source. How many human beings, 99.99999%, make no inquiries with regards to the absolute truth? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Even in human society, that's the most prominent give and take that we find in terms of social intercourse. But if you are one of those rare souls who really, really wants to know who you are, why you're here, what your purpose is, where we're going, then search out someone who has the answer. Search out a bona fide spiritual master. Such a person can impart knowledge unto you, Jnananas Tattvadarshana, because they have seen the truth. Prabhupada says, cultivation of Vedic knowledge, performance of sacrifice, distribution of munificent charities, together, all of that good stuff cannot form even part of the immunity from the pangs of material existence that is gained from performing devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So powerful, serving the Lord in bhakti yoga. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now we're suffering in so many ways due to the infection of the coronavirus. And companies are frantically researching, doing clinical trials, consuming billions of dollars to try and fight this invisible little germ, which is devastating the human society. It even affects the animals. It even affects our pets. It even affects the lions and tigers in the zoos. Tiny, invisible particle has become so powerful that it disrupts our jobs, it disrupts our health, it disrupts our politics, it disrupts our economy, and not just in one locale, not just in one country, but across the boards in every country throughout the world. That's why it's called a pandemic. Pan means everywhere you can think of, it's present. But the pandemic, the coronavirus, cannot stand against our Lord, because the Lord is even more tiny. He's pervaded himself even more forcefully into every atom, into the hearts of every living being. But if you don't awaken your God consciousness, if you don't tap into his energy, his benevolence, if you live your life keeping God at a distance, indifferent, aloof, remote from him, then you're not going to get vaccinated. You're not going to get immunity. You're going to be buffeted, tossed, and turned by whatever material nature, by whatever Maya sends you away. And especially if you're living a sinful life, if you take intoxications, if you eat meat and cause unnecessary pain and suffering to animals, then you're asking, not only are the laws of material nature stringent under the best of circumstances, not only are they stringent for those who live an upright, righteous life, but for the sinful, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in your shoes, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to tempt fate, Example is given in the Bhagavatam that if you're lost in a jungle which is infested with snakes and scorpions and tarantulas, your life is very precarious. At best, it's very precarious to navigate yourself out of that dangerous area to a place of safety. But if you're in that jungle, you find yourself lost in that jungle, and you get drunk, you get intoxicated, you don't have a prayer. If you're sane and sober, at least you have a chance of getting yourself out. But if you're such a fool and in that extremely dangerous circumstance, you go ahead and then you have a bottle of vodka or a bottle of Jack Daniels and you're drinking it, you're finished. You don't have a chance. Certainly, it's bad enough that we're in this material world. But even sane and sober, it's very risky. We have to be extremely discerning. We have to seek for the right guidance, for illumination. But if you don't care about any of that, if you're just going to intoxicate yourself doing whatever and whatever you think you can do, losing your perspective, dirtying, tainting your conscience, and you don't have a prayer. You don't have a prayer. So the laws of material nature are stringent enough as it is, but if you don't care to seek out the proper authorities to get the light to guide your footsteps, then you're finished. It is said that inquiry to the proper source is the vaccination, because when you inquire as to the nature of the absolute truth from the devotees of the Lord himself is very pleased. He's pleased with you. And he's within the atom. He's within the heart. He can call off material nature. He can call off. He can say, cease, desist, bypass this devotee. He's done it. He's stepped right into the middle of what I created him for, right in the middle of what I want him to do. So there's no need now to harass him. There may still be troubles. There may still be challenges. But from here on in, they're not meant to undo him. They're not meant to defeat him. They are meant to promote him, to build his character, and to qualify him for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So the vaccine, in a physical sense, has to deal with that which is invisibly small, which is a particle, which is, from a medical point of view, all pervasive. So many times the science say, we don't know, we're just finding out. What's the difficulty here? What's the lag? You can't see it. Even your microscopes are deficient in being able to categorize and describe this particular tiny little virus. It's minuscule. It's infinitesimal. That's what gives it its power. If it was visible, you could just, like a video game, with coronavirus or Pac-Man. But the very invisibility of it, the minuteness of it, is what gives it its power. Same principle for God. He's more minute than the virus. He's within the indivisible atom. He's completely in control. So you got to connect with him to get his shelter, to get vaccinated, to get your immunity. And when you're connected with the Lord, not only do you become immune to all the different miseries of birth, old age, and disease, but you become immune to death itself. We read time and time again about devotees who approach that moment, which is unavoidable, upon leaving their bodies, and they transition in a beautiful, peaceful way. Alexander Pope wrote a poem many, many years ago about how those who act faithfully according to their own spiritual insights and realization, who have served God, they approach death not in defeat and not in moroseness, but in triumph and in victory. His words were, if I can remember them correctly, vital spark of heavenly flame, quit, oh quit this mortal frame. Trembling, lingering, hoping, flying, oh the pain, the bliss of dying. Cease, fond nature, cease thy strife, let me languish into light. Hark, they whisper, angels say, sister spirit, come away. What is this? Absorbs me quite, steals my senses, shuts my spite, draws my spirit, drowns my death. Tell me, O soul, can this be death? The world recedes, it disappears. Heaven opens on my eyes, my ears, with sound seraphic ring. Lend your wings, I mount, I fly. O grave, where is thy victory? O death, where is thy sting? Death is a time to be much anticipated, expected. One trades in this old, decaying material body for a luminous, eternal, self-effulgent spiritual one, provided one has utilized the human form of life as it was meant to be utilized. It's not just pursuing the animalistic propensities of eating, sleeping, evading, defending, not just inquiring about the physical necessities of life, but searching out a bona fide spiritual master, rendering service, inquiring before them. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. The result will be that we will be vaccinated against birth, old age, disease, and even death itself. We read 4th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Dhruva Maharaj. He served the Lord. He saw the Lord as a young boy, 5 years old. He took the reins of power. He represented the Lord in all of his kingly duties. He served for many, many thousands of years. And then when it was time for him to transition to the next level, not only did he not get harassed by death, not only did death not come and make his death torturous and miserable, but a golden airplane came from the higher planets to transport him to his next destination. And as he approached that golden airplane at the time of death, Yamaraj, or the Lord of Death, came and bowed down so that Dhruva Maharaj was able to use him as a footstool, as a step to ascend onto that golden airplane, which then took off and took him to the higher realms. So death was not only not harassing the spirit soul of Dhruva Maharaj at the time of leaving his material body, but death was actually there helping him transition as a pure devotee. It says Krishna's power in minimizing all material sinful reactions is given as an example in Brahma Samhita. It says, beginning from the great king of heaven down to the ant, Lord Brahma says, everybody Nobody is immune from the reactions of sinful disease. Abrahma bhuvanaloka pranarabitin mamapeti pranarjanam. Except, save and except, a devotee of Krishna. He is relieved from sinful actions by the grace of Krishna. And this was proven during Krishna's pastimes when Krishna was on the planet 5,000 years ago, when the son of Krishna's teacher had passed away and been transported to the abode, to the planet of the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Now, not only was this child dead, but the child was, we say, dead and gone. What does gone mean? Dead means they left this body. Then where are they? They went to the abode of Yamaraj. And that's usually irreversible. Nobody can reclaim a dead person. Nobody's ever done that in the history of the world. But when Krishna went to his teacher, offering dakshin in exchange, in reciprocation for the education his teacher had given him, it was customary for the students to go after graduation and say, asks of me anything, I will supply it. The teacher asked Krishna to retrieve his son, who had died sometime before, bring him back to life. So Krishna immediately went to the abode of Yamaraj, and he said these words to the Lord of Death. He said, be benefited by my order. I'll just repeat that. Be benefited by my order. Madbayat bhatovatyam sudis tapati. Yeah. Varsatindo dehatyam mitus charity madbayat. Out of fear, remember we said fear is the symptom of material conditioned life. So the sun is rising and setting out of fear. Sun is also conditioned soul. Lord Brahma is creating the material universe. Many Brahmins are doing the same thing throughout the material creation, out of fear, the Supreme Lord. Wind, how powerful is wind? Tsunamis and hurricanes. Yet wind is blowing out of fear of the Lord. The seasons are changing out of fear of the Lord. The planets are floating in thin air out of fear of the Lord. And death is chasing everyone out of fear of the Lord. So death is a servant, a conditioned soul, serving the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna says, normally, death, you chase down everybody who is not God conscious, everybody who has wasted the human form of life and squandered. You chase them down. You have my permission to take them to your abode for punishment and then to put them in suitable bodies in their next lives. So that Yamaraj is doing faithfully as a servant and according to the orders of the Lord. But in an instance where a pure devotee, in this case his teacher, asks Krishna to intercede on behalf of his dead son, then Krishna goes to Yamaraj and he says, be benefited by my order, return the son. It's by Krishna's order that all souls who are not God conscious, who are atheistic and without any trust or love of the Lord, go to Yamaraj in the first place. So Yamaraj is acting only according to the order of the Lord. So therefore, it's nothing extraordinary that when the Lord orders Yamaraj to return one's soul because there's been an appeal made by a pure devotee, that Yamaraj immediately comes up with the soul and says, here, Lord, take him back. So complete immunity from all material miseries, including even death, can be granted. How? By the grace of the Lord. Krishna has the power to counteract, even to resurrect those souls who have gone to the abode of Yamaraj. And from whence does his power, unlimited power and cognizance derive? From the fact that as the Paramatma, he works on the atomic level. As the super soul, he controls the desires and reactions of all living beings from within the heart. It is this minuteness. God is great. He's the greatest. He reveals his universal form in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's a huge form. It's incomprehensibly big. The higher planets are his arms and heads. The middle planets are his belly. The lower planets are his leg. Arjuna gets all vertigo and confused and disoriented when he's seeing this universal form, and he asks, please let it be finished, Lord. He's gigantic, but he is also infinitesimal. It is from his minuteness that he gets his omnipotence and that he gets his power, his omnipotence and his omniscience. Prashant, 9th verse in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Kavim paranam anusasataram anora niyamsham anushmaradya sarvasya dataram achinta rupam aditya vanam tamasho parashtat. Here's the translation. Once again, 9th verse, 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as the oldest, the controller, and here's the key. This is why he knows everything. This is why he's the controller. Why? Because he's the smallest of the smallest. He's smaller than the atom. He's smaller than the vaccine. He enters into the atom. He can enter into the virus and do whatever he wants with that virus. Anur aniyamsham. And as the smallest, he's the maintainer of everything. He can maintain your good health. He can immunize you against the vaccine. But you have to connect with him by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, true, that's all very well and good. But what about devotees who have died due to coronavirus? Where was Krishna's protection then? We have Bhakti Charu Swami. We have Nitai Charan Swami in Russia who passed away. Yasomatinanda, my good friend Yasomatinanda, passed away recently from coronavirus and so many other. So if Krishna has all this power and all this protection, how come he didn't keep the devotees from getting the virus in the first place? Krishna never promises that he'll keep challenges, keep obstacles, keep sickness away from you, but he promises he'll get you through them. If your time is done, if your mission is served, if you've accomplished what you are put here to accomplish, and you're coming to the tape, you're coming to the finish line with panache, with victory, and God saying, well done, my good and faithful servant, then he gathers you back to him. And it may be through natural breakdown of old age, it may be through coronavirus, it may be through any number of ways that the Lord has of picking you, pulling you out of your temporary, limited, diseased body and bringing you back home, back to Godhead. Let's not quibble about how the Lord does it. The point is that from those ashes arise an eternal, luminous spirit soul, which is once and forever immunized against all material miseries. But if it's not your time, if your mission is not finished, if the Lord still has more for you to do, then nothing can take you out. No virus, no vandals, no no enemy, no nuclear weapon. Nothing can take you out because you and the Lord are a majority. Continuing here with the translation of this verse, who is the maintainer, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable. How can we conceive? We can't. The scientists are saying we don't know much about this virus. It's been going on for 7 months. The whole scientific community, with all their instruments and all their microscopes, have been focused on this virus, and they still say we don't know much about the virus. So even the virus is inconceivable. It's a material thing. But yet even that material thing, because of its minuteness, is still a mystery. What to speak of the eternally spiritual, expanded feature of the Lord as Brahman and Paramatma, who's smaller than the atom. They will remain. Maybe at some point we will discover the secrets of the virus with our instrumentation, but there'll never be a point. As long as we have material eyes, material ears, and a limited material intellect, there will never be a point when the expansiveness, the omniscience, the omnipotence of the Supreme Lord will ever be conceivable to us. And though he is forever inconceivable and beyond the range of our senses, he is always a person. He is luminous like the sun. He is transcendental, and he is beyond this material nature. Sarvasya dataram achinta rupam adityaranam tamasho parishta. Such a beautiful verse from the Bhagavad Gita. We ourselves are infinitesimal. the living being within our material bodies is 1/10,000 the size of a tip of a hair. Keshaga Satyagabaga Punasatam Sakari Tarashama Shukpana Jiva Sharupa Vichari. We are 1/10,000 the size of a tip of a hair. It is that small particle that maintains this material body, but the Lord is so much more inconceivably small that he is within the heart of your soul. You can't conceive of your soul. It's beyond the ability of your material mind and senses. And yet the Lord enters into the inconceivable soul. And therefore he's called smaller than the smallest. He enters into the atom. He enters into the heart of the smallest spiritual particle. And thus he achieves his omniscience and his omnipotency. We often wonder how these huge, huge planets weighing millions and millions of tons seem to be floating effortlessly in space. If I let go from my hand even a wisp of cotton, because of its higher density than air, it will sink to the floor. So how it is that these planets with oceans and redwood forests and mountains weighing millions and millions of tons float effortlessly in air? That is that the Lord, in terms of his all-pervasive feature, he's within each and every atom inconceivably, that he enters into the planets and he preserves them and he carries them aloof. Just in the same way that cloud is water. Water is denser than air, and yet air some or other enters into the cloud. Even though air is less dense, air should not be able to hold up water, and yet by God's arrangement, the air enters into, pervades, and supports the clouds in the atmosphere. What is all of this? Inconceivable. On that note, we'll terminate our discussion and undoubtedly revisit this verse tomorrow morning. I found it quite stimulating, uplifting. I hope you enjoyed it. You see the big smile on my face. There's such a deep satisfaction for me getting together with you on these Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings. John Malik, thank you, John. Prayer will change danger into security and peace. That's exactly our message. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna to you, John. Bless your heart. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the musical ability that you share and impart to all of our upcoming generation of devotees. If you go to the temples or the temple in Salt Lake City on a Saturday night at 7 o'clock, you'll see on any given evening some of the young people, even the adults, leading beautiful kirtans with enchanting melodies on the harmonium. That's all to Guru John Malik, who teaches them all. Prashant, right there with the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Kavim Paranam. Rupa Manjari asks, is the virus considered a living entity? Of course, life is within every living entity. Life is even within the cell. In our body, there's so many cells, and there are living entities within those cells, but there's one living entity which predominates. There's one living entity which is first and foremost, and that's who we call the I. There are living entities everywhere. Brahman, which seems to be impersonal and homogeneous and ineffable, is actually millions and millions of jivas, millions and millions of living entities who have not assumed bodies. It seems to be homogeneous, but actually even the Brahman, if you break it down, it is millions and millions of spiritual particles who have individual identity, but in the context of hovering within the Brahman, their individuality is not in any way expressed. So yes, the virus is a living entity. Considering all the verses Prashant lists from your talks, it shows how much you research and plan your classes. Yes, this keeps me in Krishna consciousness. I don't want to cheat you. I believe that if you appear before an audience without having considered in depth a theme and can express and communicate that theme, and look at that theme from all different angles in poetry and verse, even in humor, I believe that you're not giving the audience the best that you could give them. I believe that you're in some sense taking the audience for granted. Prabhupada said that whenever possible, we should prepare our talks. We should be able to speak extemporaneous off the top of our heads whenever we're called upon to do so. Every devotee should be able to do that. But when you have the time and the ability to prepare, I believe that you're exercising your duty to your audience to give them the best experience. And my purpose in appearing before you and presenting is to put a tattoo on your soul, to embed the theme so thoroughly and succinctly that it becomes a part of you, that you're a different person after the talk than you were before. And I know it's affected tremendous changes in my life over the years. I know it works for me, so I hope it works for you as well. But to just to have the time and the facility to prepare and not do that, and just appear and just speak willy-nilly off the top of your head, the effect is not going to be concentrated meditation on a specific area, a specific theme. It's going to be a little bit fragmented. It's going to be here and here and here and there. It's going to go there. It's like a river that changes course. At the end of it, you may think, well, that was a great talk. They were great stories. But there's not a takeaway. It was fine while it was going on, but you don't take anything away. So my purpose in preparing talks, and thank you for pointing that out, Rupa Manjari, is to try and embed the truth and make it a part of you. And that you generally can't do so much by... Prabhupada could do it. Prabhupada was perfect. Krishna was speaking through Prabhupada. Of course, Prabhupada also, he spent many hours every evening writing his books and making sure that according to a schedule of discipline and self-control, that many hours of day were spent translating and putting together his purport. So his thought life was extremely disciplined, extremely organized, and that, of course, would manifest itself in terms of his sitting down and giving a so-called extemporary class from the Bhagavatam. So we've got 30 comments here, and I can't see them all with this particular setup coming through Zoom to Facebook. I'm only seeing a few of the comments, but I will get to them shortly. And if you have any other questions, I'll certainly answer them. And by asking a question in the comment section, others will get to see the answer too. It's likely that the question you have will also be on others' minds. And so by posting in the comment section, you may be helping out a number of other people. With us currently, Jimmy, Prashant, Bhai Bobby, thank you. Rupa Manjari, Manasa Ganga, John Malik, Anjani Hanuman. And right below Anjani Hanuman is Anjali, Advaita Charya, Rakesh Raghava, Rupa Manjari, and Jean. Those are the ones who are currently with us. Thanks to those who have come and gone, particularly thanks to those who have commented, to those who have liked, because that helps us push us up more in the Facebook algorithms. So thank you so much. And again, we'll leave you with our hope that the aftermath of this election day and this divisiveness, bitterness, be peaceful, nonviolent, that some or other we reconcile our differences, start respecting each other more. Perhaps we'll have a change of leadership, a more inclusive mood trickling down from the top to the lower. This is what Krishna consciousness is. It's not divisiveness. It's not acrimony. It's not accusations, name-calling. This is all clearly solid in the mode of ignorance. Just read the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, divine and demoniac natures. We have been through 4 years of a demoniac mentality, and I don't mind saying that because it's the absolute truth. I hope to get back to a more Krishna conscious perspective where America is for all Americans. And though we may have differences of opinion, we may disagree, we allow our oneness. And we are individuals, we are different, but we also have a oneness in as much as we're Americans. And so It's okay to disagree, but let's all consider that we're one people. We're all the same in a sense. We all have the same needs and concerns, and we need to pull together and work together to make America great. It's founded on the principle of in God we trust. There's no other country in the world that's founded on a principle of pure God consciousness. So we have a duty to work together to continue to hold high a standard of trusting in God and be a light to the world, not to falter, not to destroy ourselves from within, but to keep marching ahead with onward Christian soldier, onward Krishna soldier. So our hope is that we continue to set a standard, to be an example to the world. But no matter what happens, always trust in the Lord, always have faith in the Lord, and know, especially from this class, that the Lord is totally and completely in charge. And even when things seem to be off the rails, when things seem to be the most chaotic and the most anarchic, that if we look back and study history, those are the times when God was most in control, when he was most doing something amazing for the upliftment and for the ultimate liberation and for the immunization of his devotees from ultimate birth, death, disease, and old age. So no matter what happens, always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We'll be back. If anything, life is uncertain. It's always uncertain at best. But what we'll be looking at tomorrow is particularly uncertain. So in all of that uncertainty, I'll be back on Wisdom Wednesday, continuing to encourage you to connect with Krishna, to be God conscious, and to always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare